Welcome to the PalPulse podcast. Today we're discussing a landmark decision made by King's College, Cambridge on the 20th of May 2025. This is the first Cambridge/Oxford College to divest, or rather to announce they will be divesting from Israeli arms and companies complicit in the genocide of Gaza. This is a very not only surprising, but pleasant piece of news, especially in the current student activism scene here in the UK. And to discuss the decision, I'm joined today by two members of King's Cambridge for Palestine. Thank you for joining me both.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Well done on achieving this. Before we run down through the events and the decision, how do you guys feel about the announcement?
I think one of the things we talked about a lot was we never really had a sense that it wouldn't happen, whether that was slightly delusional of us. But equally, I certainly never thought it would happen within kind of our 3-year tenure at King's. So it was very surreal, still feels very surreal that we've finally done it. It hasn't really sunk in yet, I think.
Yeah, I would say the same, and I'd also say, it's obviously very fantastic news, but it's also coming at one of the most intense and horrifying points in the genocide so far. We've had 11 weeks without aid entering into Gaza, and there are thousands of people in Gaza in danger of starving to death. So it's good to know that we're making a difference, but it also feels like whatever we do, it comes too late and it's too little. But as a movement, we just got to keep fighting.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it feels like these decisions or announcement made by whether it's by this university or by the government or whether it's some article condemning Israel, it always feels like it is too late because of the destruction that's occurred in Gaza. But people are still alive, and whether it saves one life or 1,000, it's something. And so I congratulate you on being able to achieve this. I'd like you to run me through the decision itself. What is actually entailed in this decision?
Yeah, so there are two kind of categories that the college has decided to divest from. The first is arms, and this is a general arms divestment with a 5% threshold level. The second category is companies that are involved in breaking of international law, including occupation. So this will include, for the purposes of Palestine, this will include other companies that are not arms companies but are still complicit in occupation by operating in the West Bank or in settlements.
And I'd like to go through the events that led up to this decision. So maybe it's best to start at the beginning. How did the activism for the end of the genocide start at King's Cambridge? And maybe if you could also discuss how it started at Cambridge as a whole.
So in Cambridge, we started with an encampment. That was kind of the formation of the group that's now Cambridge for Palestine. There had been lots of rallies before that and other disruptions, but that was kind of the landmark moment for the Palestine movement in Cambridge. And then KC4P kind of grew out of the encampment. It was the first time that I was able to see which other members of my college and my community shared my views. And it was sparked by a decision by the members of our college to invite senior members of GCHQ and the NSA to speak. It was a talk on feminism and women in tech, which was insulting on so many levels. So we made the decision to disrupt that, and we gathered a group of sympathetic students. And then that evening we sat in a student kitchen and decided that this was going to be the start of what became Cambridge for Palestine, or King's Cambridge for Palestine.
And the encampment, did it last for long? Did it achieve anything outside of what we're seeing today in the decision made by King's College?
Yeah, so the encampment lasted for 100 days. We did achieve, as a result of decamping, a working group that was set up university-wide that kind of mirrors the process at King's, actually. But it's not been particularly successful. and has kind of just been like another tool for filibustering with the university, at least. But I think the biggest win from the encampment, and I like speak personally, I can't speak for Cambridge for Palestine, is the community we've built. Like we now have hundreds of people who are ready to mobilize, and have invariably turned up to rallies, and continued to occupy buildings and disrupt the university's business as usual, which I don't think would have been possible without an encampment to bring us all together in the first place.
And how does it work, advocating and planning and being active for Palestine in Cambridge? Because unlike most other universities, which are usually one campus, Oxbridge has kind of a loosely affiliated set of colleges that are kind of separate, kind of not. Could you explain to us what that's like, trying to plan actions in Cambridge?
I think one of the difficulties is like the rules around who is and isn't allowed in buildings. That seems to bring up quite a big issue. And it does make college-based organising much more difficult. It's much more safe for college members to be able to organise within their own communities. I think the reputation of colleges as well has a big sway in things. So, like, one of our targets as KC4P has been the fact that King's upholds itself as a left-wing, kind of thought-provoking, we're the College of Alan Turing, who is said to have saved millions of lives, and yet at the same time, our college was invested in the destruction of millions of lives. So I think that definitely helped us. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, it does complicate things because all of the different colleges as separate institutions all have their own separate investment policies. So it's not just the central university's investment policy we've got to be worrying about. It's also the investment policies of all of the colleges and all of the faculties and the academic partnerships that the faculties have. So there's many different fronts to be fighting on. But I think I would say we still work together as a coalition. KC4B hasn't just been isolated King students. We've also been supported by the wider Cambridge for Palestine coalition. And of course, I would definitely say that the pressure put on the university and all the colleges by the encampment and by all of the actions taken by Cambridge for Palestine has been what has allowed us to push King's College to make this decision.
Mm-hmm.
What actions have KC4P taken independently of Cambridge for Palestine?
So it started with our GCHQ disruption, when we disrupted the talk, and we gave a short speech to our provost about why this was just completely unacceptable, and left reading the names of martyred Palestinian children. We then continued, we've done a die-in outside Evensong. So Evensong is it's an evening chapel service, and it's one of King's biggest tourist attractions. So we laid ourselves throughout the walk to Evensong, and laid with banners listing the names of Palestinian martyrs. We've also done disruptions outside Evensong. We've protested outside council votes before, and we've also protested outside invitations of people that are like known affiliates of the IDF as well.
You've mentioned that the process to getting the decision involved a working group. Could you explain to us how that decision came about? What's the process that led up to it?
We realised quite quickly that because KC4P was being very disruptive, especially in the formative weeks, we'd become quite unpopular with almost all of the fellows at the college, rightfully so, because we were not there to make their lives easy. And I think we presented quite a challenging disruption in some senses, and a constant reminder that students were not prepared to accept this business as usual policy. From that, we also wrote a council paper proposing divestment by the end of the next academic year. And whilst that was rejected alongside our open letter and the many other more bureaucratic forms of organising we did, I think we kind of made ourselves impossible to ignore. And the fellowship realised, I would say, my personal evaluation is that perhaps the working group was a means to almost quiet us down for a bit. And I don't think they thought there would be this kind of result from it, at least. And then if you want to speak.
Yes, so in the end, as a result of that paper, as was just explained, the college created this responsible investment working group. I was elected as a student representative onto the working group. So for almost a year now, we've been working towards this change of policy. In the end, what sort of, I suppose, solidified the decision that we heard yesterday was a survey that was carried out of all of the members of college, and this survey showed an overwhelming majority of college members, including students, staff, and fellows, in favour of these divestment exclusions that we've seen announced. So following this, I think it was quite clear that this was the right decision, and this has very fortunately been allowed to be implemented into a policy.
What's different about King's College that has allowed this decision to be made as opposed to the other colleges in Cambridge?
I think probably one of the biggest differences is the way King's brands itself. It was great for our kind of Instagram material because there are just endless videos talking about how King's wants to produce change makers and disruptive thinkers. And they really, as I've said, cling on to this legacy of King's being, the College of Alan Turing, of E.M. Forster, and all sorts of gay radical thinkers, more broadly speaking. So I think one of the concerns that King's had in kind of dealing with us as a organising group was the press attention and the way that their reputation would be affected had they cracked down on us, because it would create a real juxtaposition between all of this promotional material that's offered to prospective students about the kind of college King's wants to be, and then in brutally shutting down student activists very publicly. That would create just such a dichotomy. So I think that was something we were really able to play on, that worked in our favour.
And to add to that, actually, I think King's general sort of reputation being quite a well-known college, having quite a strong name brand, I think that was also quite an important factor because it was something we could use to put pressure on the college by, like what's just being talked about with the disruptions of certain events that had a very strong tourist pull. The college makes a lot of money through tourism. So these sort of threats to their status as such a well-known institution is something that we could really use to put pressure on the college.
A question to you both. You're both young and bright. You're at one of the best institutions in the entire world. You have, lucrative futures ahead of you potentially. Why have you decided to put yourselves and your futures at risk for something that's occurring thousands of miles away?
I think a lot of it I drew from kind of my personal life. I found it strangely empowering to join a broader struggle, especially when I had kind of a lot of personal issues going on. And in a very strange way, it felt like something that I could control and something that genuinely I was able to make a change in the world. And I was a big history fan when I was younger, and I could see the parallels between so many of the fascist regimes that have existed before, and exactly what is happening in Palestine now. And I always remember as a student being asked, what would you do if, you were around and during one of these awful atrocities that we now all condemn people for not speaking out about. And I think that was the question I always asked myself was, would I be able to live with myself if I hadn't done everything in my power to try and stop at least my college from funding this?
Yeah, for me, I would say it definitely came from just a pure place of absolute horror about the events in Gaza. Before the encampment began last year, my relationship with the atrocities felt completely different. I felt completely powerless. and being able to actually enact some kind of change in the world was just incredible. And I would rather not be doing this. I'd rather there wasn't a genocide happening in Gaza, and that the university I go to, I'd rather it weren't investing money in companies that are complicit in that genocide. But that is the reality that we're in, and that is why I have to act.
Have there been any disciplinaries, either in King's College or in the wider Cambridge Collegiate?
I think the biggest threat we've faced is the injunction that the university pursued against the pro-Palestine movement in Cambridge. So we were really lucky to be supported by ELSC, which is like an amazing organisation who fought back against the injunction. So in, I think, early this year, the university attempted to injunct the 4 key spots of protest. And the level of injunction, it was described as a watershed moment for human rights and protest law. The UN Special Rapporteur for freedom of speech intervened. We were lucky enough to be supported by Liberty and Amnesty International because the precedent that the initial injunction they pursued set was such that even if you were wearing a pro-Palestine badge and walking through injuncted land, you could be held in contempt of court and fined or put in prison. So I think the university has definitely taken a repressive tone, but equally, we have been incredibly privileged. I think the benefit of the media attention, like Cambridge University is so aware of its reputation. And we have been so lucky, I think, out of all of the student movements to have not faced like extreme police violence and not faced like extreme disciplinary procedures. And I think we're all very acutely aware of that privilege, especially, like our comrades in Oxford have faced like so much violence. And we've been really lucky in that sense.
What's next for KC4P?
I would say we want to reach out to as many student movements as possible. I think the biggest precedent that this has set is a legal precedent. So I'm sure most student activists will be familiar with charity law. And charity law is always the reason that is cited as to why a various like institution, whatever that may be, cannot make a political statement about Palestine, cannot stand in solidarity with them, and cannot cut ties with Israel. But actually, the paper that has come of the working group is a means to navigate this excuse of charity law. And I think definitely for me, it's about like disseminating that information to as many people as possible, and working with as many other student groups in Cambridge and like globally, to make sure that this is something that we build from. And I don't think we're going to stop just because King's has divested. Like there are over 30 other colleges in Cambridge we've got to target first.
Yeah, to add to that, definitely, we're hoping that this is going to set an example and a precedent for other colleges or other universities to take similar actions. I'm sure we both will be continuing to take part in the broader Palestine struggle and in the Cambridge for Palestine coalition. I would also emphasise that I think we're going to have to keep closely watching King's and make sure that this is implemented and that their word are kept, that their word is kept. Of course, there was the incident last year where Trinity College, there was a leak from inside Trinity College that they were divesting, and then they went back on their word. So we have to make sure that King's College actually implements this policy.
On a final note, and this question to you both, what would your message be to the people of Gaza today?
Do you want to?
I don't know.
I think mine would probably be like a message of admiration, like the resilience and resistance in the face of like such gratuitous evil and suffering is incredible. And I think that's definitely something I've tried to like draw on, especially when we were facing increasingly repressive tactics, and it felt like almost every door was being slammed in our faces. Whenever I saw like the situation in Gaza, and the kind of like persisting hope, it just reminded me that actually this is like the least I can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can say at all that's going to change right now. What's happening in Gaza? It's horrific, and there's no taking away from that. But I will always, as long as there are people in Gaza suffering because of the complicity and because of the actions of the UK government and because of universities in the UK, I will always fight to end that complicity and to bring an end to the genocide.
Well, thank you both for your time. Congratulations, and I wish you luck and all the best in furthering the Palestine cause on campus and hopefully beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you.